raised by his mother because he had no father. He wanted a father, but his couldn't bother. And just what price are we paying for our fatherless sons? There's just too many angry boys carrying around guns. It starts in school when other kids talk about their dad, and he doesn't have one, so he distracts them by trying to be bad. He hides his sadness underneath his outer tough exterior. He doesn't want anyone to know that it's him that feels inferior. After all, there must be something about him that caused his father to walk out. And when he thinks about it, it's the other kid he chooses to knock out. He has to be tough because there's no one to defend him. And eventually it's the juvenile institution where they would choose to send him. And now he's got the proof that he's nothing but a fuck-up. And the loneliness he feels is just something he must suck up. Like all the different men that passed on through his life, that his mother had brought home hoping that she would one day be a wife. Those that tried to push him around while they acted really tough. Until the day he pushed them back when he had had enough. And it had always been him that his mother had kicked out, until the time passing on the clock finally had ticked out, until he no longer had a home and was left out on the street, in a lifestyle that was dangerous that could only end up in defeat. The local gang would realize he was another fatherless son. They not only knew he would sell dope, but he would also carry a gun. He'd become just one more recruit, just another boy who lost, another stain left on society of which there would be a cost. And society would never consider how lost he'd always felt. Most of them would never hold the hand of cards this kid was dealt. And there was lots of evidence if anyone had been paying attention, and it certainly showed up long before they put him in detention. From the moment he'd entered school, he had trouble fitting in, but rather than help him sort it out, it was an empty classroom that he was sitting in. All the times they timed him out didn't teach him to connect, and eventually in his painful rejection, he learned how to disconnect. It was the only way he could fend off that somehow he was a loser, because the men his mother dated would reject him, yet they would choose her. He wasn't really sure what set him apart from all the others. He knew other kids who also had no sisters or no brothers. The fact that he had no father made him feel like he'd been dumped, and he got it pretty clear it was among the bad kids that he'd been lumped. They thought he was hyperactive, so eventually they put him on Ritalin, and all the teachers talking to him in a way that was belittling, and no one ever thought to ask him how it was that he was feeling, and no one ever thought to find out with what issues he was dealing. And the ways in which he was dealt with only reinforced his confusion. All the times he was ignored by others only entrenched his disillusion. Eventually he bought their story that he was nothing but a bad kid, so no one would ever know him with the silent pain that he had hid. But swallowed pain is like a trap that lashes out without a warning. The anger that it fuels is present from the nighttime to the morning. And no one likes an angry person, no one wants to understand, no one wants to ask about it or reach out a lending hand. We all take it personally like we're the ones who are the cause, like we're the ones who built the iceberg and the reason why it thaws. We're afraid to ask the person what their anger is about. We're afraid if they start talking, then all they'll do is shout. And then it will echo our own shame and bring up our own pain of a time when we were yelled at and our attempts to escape were all in vain. It's the denial we all walk in, where we hold our past at bay. We don't want to dig up the painful memories from the depths in which they lay. We fear the memory will hurt us like it did so long ago. So we walk around somewhat unconscious, and it's our self-understanding we forgo. But there's something wrong with the decision to not know what made you who you are, and it's our ignorance that makes us all victims of some lost emotional scar. But more importantly, it's the example that we pass on to our kin, so that a child grows up in pain, never knowing he's broken, and all he has is himself to blame for the trouble he can't avoid, and the only way he can manage to survive is to grow a heart that is devoid, and violence becomes the bait in which he feels like he has power, and it helps him bury the memories of the times he had to cower, because now he's become the monster, able to instill fear, and the monster from the past has become his reflection in a mirror, and the walls that he has built are higher than those around a prison, and the anger that he feels come from the depths where it has risen, and now he visits his vengeance on those who are unsuspecting. He will make every person pay for how much he experienced their rejecting. And they will never know their crime, but they will pay the price for how an uncaring father had turned his son's heart into ice. We can't afford to leave fatherless children alone and set adrift, who grow up to believe that their death will be a gift. If there's no value to their life, then they will not value yours at all. They will not stop to think twice when their push causes you to fall. They will not care if you plead with them to give you consideration, because all the times they looked for comfort, they found no commiseration. They say when you throw a boomerang, it will eventually return. When we throw away fatherless children, it's a pain we will relearn. It's the pain we left them in that comes back in our direction, and it's magnified by all the years that they've experienced our rejection. Fatherless children need a man who will step up to the plate, but someone who is healthy, who can teach them love, not teach them hate. If not, they are recruited into the gangs of angry boys, where they are poisoned by a philosophy that only teaches to destroy, where the price of life is cheap and you must be ruthless to survive, and they capitalize on a kid's anger and the hatred they revive. They appeal to them with notions of power and of strength. They tell them they're behind them and that they would go to any length, that they are some form of brotherhood that will always stand together, that they will be with them through the storms or any kind of weather. But when they're shot down on the street, they are left to die alone, and just one more act of violence that they continue to condone. There'll be another to replace them, there's no shortage of recruits, and so another kid will die in order to settle this dispute. And if this doesn't make any sense, it is because that they are kids. Their frontal lobe's not working, which is why they always blow their lids. Kids don't make good soldiers because their control center doesn't work. The problem lies deep within their brains, where the source of their anger often lurks. They'll make the most vicious killers because they haven't formed their morality. There are no shades of gray in their worlds, only a stark polarity. And if they are trained to be heartless, then their heart will be forgotten, and we will have to face the mess that our ignorance has begotten. And where are all the fathers who have created this vulnerable group? Would you leave your sons to die needlessly? Is that the level you would stoop? You have left them unprotected so that they fall victim to the gangs. You chose to walk away, which caused their emotional hunger pangs. If you cannot be a father, then you need to use protection. You have no right to subject a child to nothing but rejection. You have no right to leave your son abandoned on the street, where he has no ties to anyone, so his choices end up in defeat. And we as a society must pay for your callous disregard, because it was your son that you have chosen to discard. In the meantime, men must step forward to meet these children's needs. It's the only way to quell the anger and the violence that it feeds. Every young boy needs a father, as every young girl needs a mother. We need the compassion to respond to them when they haven't any other.